would be this. As you can see, this is very common with aluminium joinery. You can see all the black looking stuff on there, and I mean same thing again, it's on the windows and things like that. That's potential visible mold, more than likely cladosporium.
And then again the
same thing
humidifiers.
Again, the air conditioning unit, which that one there is quite furry as well, which would do the same test on that.
So what do you think is actually, Bret, what's the problem with these humidifiers? Like supposedly they should keep everything intact, like, but what's the problem? Why does the mold thrive in them?
My belief is because they're sucking any form of dust in through the top of the machine, and the filters are not filtering down to, you know, I mean mold spores are like 0.2 microns, or 0.2 microns, I think. Don't quote me 100% on that. But anyway, the filters are not adequate enough to filter out those spores correctly, you know, enough to make them actually useful. They're actually, the filters are only there to actually protect the machine more than they are to create the air better. I know there is other machines out there now that they're saying, like nano filters and all that, but I still tend to, even in those machines, get high levels of mold spores in the barrel fan. So obviously the filters to me aren't sufficient enough to get those mold spores out of the air. So once they go through into the machine, they go into the coil, which is where all the heating and cooling takes place, which is 9 times out of 10 a very damp environment, because these things are kind of dehumidifying at the same time, and any moisture in the air is condensating on that coil, and then it just creates, you've got dust, you've got mold spores, and then you've got moisture. So that's just perfect environment for mold to
thrive,
to
grow.
Thrive. So
wow.
Yeah, so I mean that's why they are such a huge source of exposure.
All right, let's go to another room, the last room. All right, so Bret has some additional information on how, like, let's say, even you could technically use these humidifiers and be okay if you kind of undergo a certain protocol, yeah?
Yeah, a cleaning regime, and it needs to be done by a specialist person, basically. And what they tend to do is they actually take the cover off the whole machine, and then inside it exposes all the coil. Then they actually put a bag around this machine, and they spray different sorts of cleaners into the coil and into the barrel fan, and then they actually high pressure water blast it with a small water blaster. And that tends to be the only way to get rid of the mold spores out of the machines. I've done a couple of test cases where we've cleaned them periodically over a 6-month period, and if they're used all the time, I recommend they should be cleaned a minimum seasonally, because the mold spores just tend to grow back so fast.
So once in 3 months, 4 times a year,
yeah,
something
4 times
around
a year.
that.
Basically every season I'd clean it. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and so for the last spot, we will look into shower, and we can then go there.
Right here.
So now we are entering into shower, and we can overview. That's quite a damp place. That's quite a lot of moisture, usually, yeah?
In general, yeah. I mean, showers are one of the wettest areas in the home, aren't they? So, I mean, what we find in here is, is commonly mold.
So those black spots.
So those black spots will tend to be mold, yeah, definitely. And I mean, a way of getting around that is basically just every time you shower is to dry it, to get rid of that moisture, and then there's no moisture in there for anything to grow. Getting it clean now is a mission. The only way you're really going to get rid of it is by getting a company in to remove all the silicon and all the grout and re-grouting and re-siliconing the whole thing again. Yeah, and that's the only way you'll be able to remove that in showers. So in general, what I'd recommend in showering areas is, one, always have an extractor fan that should be ducted to the exterior of the house, like this one is. And I know it's ducted to the exterior because that's part of our building code in New Zealand. And that should be running every time you have a shower and for 10 minutes after. And I mean, if it's steamy in here after 10 minutes of it running, then the fan might not be adequate enough and you might have to get a stronger one put in here. But by reducing that moisture in this room and by drying that with a towel after showering will make a huge difference on keeping those levels of mold down.
So quite a safe and simple and effective protocol in a way.
Basically, most recommendations for mold, especially in houses like this where there's not huge water issues like leaks or anything like that, is general housekeeping and keeping dust levels to a minimum in areas that you don't tend to clean very often, like behind fridges or under beds and things like that, because that dust just carries mold spores and potential mold growth.
I see. Thank you very much, Bret, for this information.